Hello, Internet. I am here with my dear friend Julia LaCourse, who's been one of the coolest people since I've met her when she was 15 years old, all them years ago. Uh, Julia wants to talk Mad Max Fury Road and why it is the greatest movie of all time, I believe is the exact phrase you used. So let's do it, Jules. Let's talk Mad Max.
Yeah, I stand by that. I was doing a little bit of research before we started our call, and apparently it is like considered to be one of the greatest action movies of all time, which I didn't really think anybody else in the world really thought about. Like, I don't really talk about Mad Max Fury Road with a lot of people, so it never really crossed my mind. But I really fucking love this movie.
Well, as I'm trying to line up people to come and talk to me for this, my friend's like, cool shit. One of my old roommate in Pittsburgh, who used to fall asleep every night to this movie, is very disappointed you've got it first. And I'm like, no, multiple people can talk about it. We just have to
Oh,
give it
that's
some
true.
space.
Right.
So maybe she'll come on and talk it in like 6 months, and then 6 months later, I'll have the both of you come on and talk about it, and I won't even be here.
That's perfect.
Yeah, and it won, I believe, for cinematography, correct?
Oh,
I
one like 6 or 7. I was looking. It definitely won Best Editing. I remember I watched the Oscars that year for it because I was like, if this movie doesn't win like Best Picture or whatever, I'm gonna be pissed. But it was definitely like Best Editing, I think Best Costume, like Best Adapted Screenplay or something like that. Like it's a whole bunch of awards that it got. It deserves it.
it is phenomenal. I wouldn't go as far as saying the best movie of all time, but I think as far as that apocalyptic apocalypse post-apocalypse world, like machines that make no sense versus everything else type genre. I
Yeah.
mean, the original, I'm pretty sure, invented the genre in
Oh,
general,
absolutely. Yeah.
but this one, I mean, goes far beyond the original Mad Max films. I think Waterworld, even though it's like a world filled with water, it's essentially the same movie, but with water
Mhm.
instead of desert.
Yeah.
And this is far superior to that, which I thought had the crown before, although I might be alone in that.
Really? Yeah, I think you might be. I have a friend actually who likes Waterworld a lot, so you have somebody at least. But
Yeah, I don't know why I love Waterworld as much as I love Waterworld. Maybe it's just the age I saw it, since I saw it like
yeah,
8 years old, and
mhm.
the whole idea of this was like, oh man, that's mind blowing. But this is definitely a superior movie. The cast is phenomenal.
God, yes, like Charlize Theron is so cool and so amazing in this movie. And I think this is one of her first like action movies that she did, and now she's like an action bombshell. Like she's done so many really great action movies since then.
Yeah,
Um,
I think she did
Atomic
one.
Blonde, I think, is really big, or was really big in the action circles, whatever. And what was the newest one that she was on that was like the Netflix
I didn't
movie?
see it. I'm not gonna lie, I don't watch a lot of Netflix at all. I'm
Me neither.
Hulu, I'm Hulu, and I'm Peacock, and those are my streaming services.
Ah, I see.
But I'm a sitcom person, and those are where I think the sitcoms are. Not that Netflix doesn't have sitcoms, but I've just never been a sitcom person. So,
Mhm.
and HBO Max, I've been using a lot for these other projects because on my podcast, we recently rewatched the 4 original Batman films,
Oh,
and
nice.
those are on Max too. And so this is on Max. So I've been using HBO Max for movies more and more. But yeah, no, Peacock and Hulu are where I stream. So things pop on Netflix, and unless I'm looking for them, I'll never see them. So I find Big Mouth, and that is it.
Well, I was looking online or like on my Netflix account to watch Fury Road last night because I was like, it's got to be on Netflix or whatever. I have Netflix, I have Hulu, I've got YouTube, and like all that fun stuff. I've got Amazon Prime, and I couldn't find it anywhere. I had to like go on. I downloaded it on my computer and I watched it that way. So who knows why?
That
But
is always the worst case scenario. I like that you said, of course, it had to be on Netflix because at one point that was the case. It was on Netflix or it was on Hulu because those were the only two. But
yes,
now with 87 different streaming services, it can be anywhere. I
yeah,
like when it's on Tubi and it's just like randomly free, and you're like, oh yeah, no, that just came on my Roku. I've got that.
amazing.
But this one was not on Tubi. It makes sense it would be on HBO Max because it is a blockbuster.
That's true. That does make sense.
Uh, yeah, Charlize is unrecognizable in this as well. I mean, she's done this before. Like Monster, you don't recognize her either. But yeah, unrecognizable in this. Like, but really, that goes for most of the cast. I think Tom Hardy's the only person who looked like himself in this film. He looked like
Yeah.
Tom Hardy.
Yeah.
And I forgot that that stupid Bane voice he does is actually just kind of his voice.
It's just really just Tom Hardy. He's trying his best in every role. And that's just him. But I think it really complements whatever he's got going on, because I also really love him in this movie as Mad Max Rokitansky. Like, he doesn't have very much to say throughout the whole movie, but he, like, as I rewatched this movie last night, I cried like twice throughout the whole movie because it's actually like emotional and it really gets you. You know, their connection is almost immediate, and it really gets to me.
It is emotional. The connection between everyone in that rig and then when they meet the women in the desert, everything's really emotional, and the dialogue is very, very sparse. So that emotion is just its tone, its body language, its looks, which is just a credit to everyone in the movie. But yeah, damn, it is a really good movie. A friend had mentioned um that it tends to be women who love this movie, and then they love this movie to a degree that's insane. And I'm like, I don't want to disagree with you, but like, I don't know that it's an insane, because there are so many things to love about this movie. But if you think about it, it's not the rom-com. It's the
Yeah.
exact opposite of the rom-com, but there is like
Yeah.
a connection there. What is it for you specifically? I wouldn't ask you to speak for any type of person other than yourself, but for you in particular, what is it about this movie?
Oh God, there's so many things. I really love, again, Furiosa, and it's obviously established, but it's never said that she has this high like power even within this terrible world. Like, she's worked her way up to being an imperator, however she did it. And then she essentially throws it all away to rescue these 4 or 5 poor women who have had this terrible experience. And again, I love that they never really show really any of the bad stuff that's happened to them. Like, you just kind of get it through, again, their body language and like what they're wearing. Like, they don't have to have like a bad flashback of like getting raped or something like that, which in like a lesser movie I think they would rely on. So I really appreciated that. And even so many people die in this movie. Like, even good people that you are rooting for died terribly in this movie. But again, you never really see it, and it's never really lingered upon, which I also appreciate, because I'm never one for like gore or like horror. I don't really like that kind of stuff. But it's just that one big chase, and then it's the race back. Like, they slingshot back around. And as I was rewatching it last night, I was like really impressed by like the bravery within the movie that would take. Like, you've essentially gotten free of whatever you're running from, and you have this chance to go across the salt and hopefully like find somewhere else that you can survive. But everybody is like immediately on board with going back and having one hard day and taking back what is essentially, you know, the green place now, which I love so much.
Well, I'm immediately on board, and it's never said but clearly understood that not all of them are making it. Like, that's
Yes.
just, it's like, yeah, let's do it. And
right.
then,
Yeah. We're in the middle of some apocalyptic wasteland. We don't really have anything else to live for at this point, you know?
it's, I like the idea that there is no setup. Like, you don't need it. You're in a post-apocalyptic desert. Like, bad things happen. You'll figure it out from there. And the only death they kind of dwelled on wasn't really a death. It was when the one that was pregnant fell out,
Yeah.
and it turns out she didn't really go under the car, under the tire. She definitely went under the car, but not under the tire. And it's interesting that they dwelled on that for like half a second, but then it's not even mentioned again. That they're not going back for anyone. It's just, that's when the ladies understood the stakes, and they're like, oh, we either get through this or we die.
Yeah, exactly. This is the real shit. Like, we're in it for whatever is gonna happen. And it's already so intense up until then. Like, even before you realize that they're in the rig with her. They have that whole big chase scene, I think. Oh yeah, it's with their own war boys. When they notice that Furiosa has gone off the track and is not going to Gastown, and start to like go after her. And we don't even know that there's anybody else with her. We don't really know at the beginning of this movie what she's doing. She's just like, yeah, we're going off road, and we have to kind of figure it out with everybody else, at the same time, which I love. I love that nothing is really like told to you in a really boring way. It's just like, yeah, you're here for the ride. Like, let's go.
Yeah, there's essentially no epilogue to this film at all. You just start in Act 2 in this film.
Yeah, you just get going.
Now, you're an avid reader. Does any part of you wish there was that general storyline to it, or are you okay with them changing the
I
rules?
really like it, actually. I like that it's so simple too. I remember when I first watched this in the movie theater, I was so excited to see this movie because I love Mad Max. I love all of the Mad Maxes. Anyway, like I named my cat Max after Mad Max Rokitansky. And so I was so excited to see it, and I so wanted it to be good that I was like on the edge of my seat just waiting. And it's only like 10 minutes until like it really gets going, like until Max and Furiosa see each other for the first time. And I just remember it being in the theater being like, okay, like when is this gonna happen? Like let's go. Like we don't need anything really again to be explained to us. Like we can just go right into the action, and it's great.
Now, when did you first see the original Mad Max films?
Oh God. I remember, I mean, my cat Max is probably 15 years old now. He's still alive. But I probably saw it when I was 12 or 13. I remember I used to stay up really late in high school, and my mom had like satellite TV. And so I would just watch whatever movie was on, like the hundreds of channels. I watched all kinds of crazy shit. And I saw The Road Warrior first, and I just absolutely loved it. Like it was everything that I didn't know I wanted in an action movie. Like, and again, I was still pretty young. I didn't really have internet for a long time when I was a kid. So like I had no idea what was going to happen in this movie, like what the history behind it was, what like the Australian exploitation movies were. I just really loved the post-apocalyptic scenarios that were in it, even though it's pretty fucking bleak. Like
I enjoy when they're bleak because it feels
Mhm.
real. I mean, let's face it, there's not going to be a happy ending for the majority of the people that go post-apocalypse. Like, you're literally fucking post-apocalypse. Like, you're post the end. Like, it's over.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There really isn't any like bright side, I guess, to the apocalypse, obviously. So I really appreciate George Miller for showing it how terrible it would actually be.
Yeah, and even the end of this one, like, yes, they make it back to the green, but just because they're accepted there, like, we're not seeing what's happening. We're not seeing the problems. Also, this is a prequel, so we know the world's still terrible
Yeah,
in the
exactly.
future.
Yeah. And I love that. I love that there isn't really anything, like it's just this one contained story, and it has a really hard stop at the end. We don't really need to know what else happens. And I think a lot of the times, like directors or authors, especially like in like books, you notice it a lot where they'll have like an epilogue and explain like, oh, everybody got married and had babies and everyone was happy forever. And it's like, I don't need to know that, like I can create my own scenarios in my head if I really enjoy this universe, but like nothing has to be set in stone after this story. It's a perfect story, and that's all that we really need.
It's interesting you said that because I feel similar. I'll of course read the epilogue because I'll need to know if it's written there, but
Yeah.
I don't need it. I think Harry Potter was the biggest one, and that makes more
Yeah.
sense because essentially the book was aimed at young teens at that point. So I think an epilogue made more sense. But I'm like, okay, is your target audience of this mystery thriller people in their 30s? Because we don't need an epilogue. We've
Yeah,
been reading
exactly.
books now long enough in theory that we'll have a next one.
Hmm.
With the rare exception of, I think, Dennis Lehane had a quick epilogue at the last book of his Pat McKenzie series, and this
Okay.
was this was 6 books of the same characters, and there was a time jump in there as well.
Yeah.
So that made sense because I think he was done writing it, and then he wrote this last one, And I felt like the epilogue was him saying, yes, I told you guys I was done. Here's your last one, and I'm done. And that made
Right. That's the
more,
end.
yeah, that made more closure because now it was a 6 book long series that fans had been asking for more for. There'd been a movie made. So that made sense more of like a nail in the coffin type thing, which there's never a nail in the coffin when it comes to this stuff. He could pick it up again. But
Yeah.
if it lessens the fans mail he's going to get about, fans still send mail, fan emails, fan DMs about whether or not he's going to get a new series. But I think with this film, it was nice to see it felt kind of definite, but not overly definite, because in the world of IP films, like it wouldn't take much to get another Fury focused Mad Max film.
Well, that's the thing again, as I was reading, like doing a little bit of research about this movie just before we got on the call, like apparently there is a Furiosa movie that's in like pre-production right now as of 2020. And I'm like, I really don't need it. I love Furiosa as a character, obviously. Like, but I don't need to see, I mean, I trust George Miller. I'm sure that it's going to be an awesome movie if it does happen. But at this point, I don't really have a hankering to see another Furiosa movie or even another Mad Max movie.
You can just rewatch this one over
Yeah,
and
exactly.
over
Like
again.
it's literally the best action movie I've ever seen. I remember as we went into the theater to see it for the first time, and it's a 2 hour long movie. Like this is not a 90-minute like, you know, wham bam thank you ma'am kind of movie. It's 2 hours long and it does not feel like it. When we got out of the movie theater, I wanted to like turn back around and go back and watch it again like immediately because it was so much fun.
That is a good sign. Anytime something gets over like that 96-minute mark, I have to take stock. Like, how much am I invested? As I told you, I'm a sitcom person, so even sitting through like 47 minutes without commercials of a serial like drama is a lot for me, because I'm like, I can get 22 minutes, chuckle a couple of times, and barely pay attention, or I can invest my time.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't feel at all. I mean, the longest stretch of the movie is the beginning before the war boys catch on to what she's doing. So the longest stretch of the movie is the 10 minutes in the beginning. I think is good for the pacing of the rest of the film. Not the best for that first 10 minutes, because you could lose someone
exactly.
there.
Yeah. Sorry, what?
I said we're in the middle of the action at that point already. So
yeah, exactly. Like again, as I was watching it, like those 10 minutes, like you said, really kind of drag by. But at this point, I know this movie like the back of my hand. And again, it's not a very complicated movie. So, you know, you can kind of enjoy it for what it is, as like the setup, however little it is of this, you know, big chase. It's pretty great.
I mean, this film is literally a straight line and back. So
it's the oldest story, right? Is the chase or the race.
What would you say if you had to narrow it down to your favorite scene? What is your favorite scene in this film?
I know exactly because it made me cry in the theater, and it made me cry last night. It's when it's at the very end when Furiosa is dying essentially, and Max is trying to help her, and he's giving her his blood, and he's being so gentle. He's like saying, you know, like, I'm sorry that I have to do this. You know, you got to stay awake, blah blah blah. And then the music swells and the music cuts out, and he says, my name is Max. And like, it makes me cry every time. Those two are such good actors that like, that it's such a simple scene, but there's so much emotion, even though it's not like they love each other or even maybe like each other, like they have some sort of connection. And he's just trying to save her, even though at the beginning of the movie, he was only trying to survive. You know, he's kind of offering up his life for hers at the end. And it's great.
It is a wonderful scene, and it set up so well by two scenes earlier when the war dogs are fighting, and we see how easily they know how to transfer blood somehow. Like they have no other medical care, but they can transfer.
But they got blood. That down.
Yeah. And then of course when she asked his name and he refused to, like, just it was two separate scenes that set up that emotional scene. But really the movie just flows so well, and the reactions just seem real. For me, my favorite scene is when they're stuck in the dirt and Furiosa comes up running and she just starts pushing the rig, and it's the most ridiculous thing in the world. And you could see any other director being like, come on, she wouldn't do that. But no, in that moment, she would 100% think, maybe I can give
Mhm.
that just little extra push. And she
Yep.
does it the entire time until the truck goes moving, and then she's moving. And it's just like,
Mhm.
yes, I would do that same thing.
Yes.
I would
Yeah. If
know
I
it's
was in this
fruitless, but
situation, yes. If
yeah,
I was being chased by a bunch of like murderous war boys, I would do anything in my power in order to escape. And that's exactly what she does, you know?
yeah. And it's just, and I think the other thing about that is she doesn't ask anyone else to push either, because
Hmm.
she's protecting those other women and they need
Yes.
to be in the rig.
Yep.
So, you know what? Maybe the whole group of them would have made a difference. She wasn't going
Hmm.
to make a difference, but in your mind, you just do anything. It just felt
Yep.
so real, but at the same time, so like silly from an observer if you're not trying to put yourself in that shoes. And
Hmm. Well, also, I was thinking about that, like you said, there's a lot of, and it is kind of a silly movie. It's definitely over the top. And I was thinking about it, and it's kind of like a fairy tale, like not a fun fairy tale. I mean, it's fun for me, but not a happy fairy tale, we'll say. But it is kind of like magical thinking where, they go through this really hard day. They finally get to where like they're trying to go, even though the green place is gone. And then it's like, well, no, actually, we're going to go back and take back the Citadel. And, myself, if I was in that situation, I'd be like, hell no, like we've escaped. We can maybe make it across the salt. Like, I do not want to go back through there. But everybody's, again, immediately on board. They're like, yep, we can do this. We're going to do it. It's what's right to do. And they do, like at the end. And Furiosa and the wives survive, and actually get, on the lift and are taken up to hopefully take back the Citadel.
it's really interesting that Furos is the last one involved, and Max just simply says that you can travel 160 days and still find salt. And it was kind of one of those moments for me. I've seen the movie a few times now, but I was like, oh, she knows that. She was running
Mhm.
away. She was
Yeah,
running
exactly.
away, and these women were following her. And I was
Hmm.
like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. I don't know how it didn't hit me before, but
Hmm.
maybe I was paying more attention last night watching it than I have in previous viewings, knowing we were gonna have this conversation. But I was like, yeah, no, she's running away, because that breakdown always felt perfect. The breakdown when she
Hmm.
finds out the green is now a
Oh my god, yeah.
desolate swamp with weird
Hmm.
bird creatures.
Hmm.
They felt like something out of a dark Jim Henson film. Those
Oh
bird
yeah,
creatures.
absolutely.
That is how someone would walk in Dark Crystal
Hmm. Oh yeah.
IMAX version, I'm pretty
Yep.
sure.
Hmm.
But I was just, yeah, that's her running away after that breakdown because she's already put her hope into this. So
Hmm.
now her only hope is keeping them safe for as long as she can. So it made sense that she would want to run. It made sense
Hmm.
that she's the leader and everyone would follow her. And it would make sense that Max was able to reason her with her by just simply saying redemption. So
Well, that's the thing. Like, oh, I remember when I first saw it, when they're having that conversation, and oh, it's a great scene. And also, this is just a beautiful movie. Like every shot is just so great to look at. Like they're shooting day for night, which I think a lot of people don't like. But as I was rewatching it, I was like, this just looks beautiful. Like just the blues. It's so well shot. Like I could really see it being like nighttime in the desert, and you get that kind of like residual glow or whatever from the sun and the daylight. But Furiosa is offering Max that motorcycle, and she's like, you can come with us if you want to. And he says, hope is a mistake, you know, like. And when I first watched it, I was like, what the fuck? Like, this is like the antithesis of this movie is that hope is a mistake. Like, it's all about hope, like they're trying their hardest and it seems crazy, but like they have this hope that everything is going to work out. But as I rewatched it, he tells her when in the daytime when he catches up with them as they're riding across the salt, and he's like, if you can't fix what's broken, then you'll go insane, and like this is your only really shot at redemption. And it finally like clicked for me, where it was like, oh, like yeah, you can't run away from your problems. Like you have to turn around and face them, which is like that's the whole movie right there. Is like you have to turn around and face the problem.
yeah, everything just flows together so well. Everyone's motives remain the same. It's
Mm-hmm.
just beautiful. And when Max like slips off into the crowd, you're like, yes, that is the guy who disperses hope, because
Yep.
that's what he's heading for if he goes up that ramp. So,
Mhm.
and what do you make of the chemistry between Hardy and Theron, especially
I
given the fact that apparently he was a dick on set, is what's
Yes.
come out?
Yes, what I've heard is that they did not like each other on set, which always makes me sad because I want movies to just be fun in every way. Like I want them to be fun when they're like filming, and I want it to be a fun movie like as I'm watching it. And it really was disappointing for me to hear that. But apparently, like they had a great working relationship. I guess they got it done. They had respect for each other at least, but it's just kind of sad. I wanted this to be such a fun experience for everybody on the movie, even though it's like I don't know any of these people. Like, it just seems like it would be so fun to do all the time. And I watched the special features on my version of the DVD that I have, and it goes into like all the costumes and like the wheels that they have, the steering wheels that they all make, and it's just all made out of like trash. And they're just like hundreds of people just working on like all this random stuff that you see in this movie made out of trash. And I was like, that's my dream job, really. Like to make a wheel that ends up in Mad Max out of trash that I found in like a trash heap. That's perfect. Like it just sounds like so much fun. But it's just so sad because they do have great chemistry in this movie. I feel it. Like I think every person who watches a movie where there's a male and female lead, like the general thought is that they'll end up together and that they should have chemistry or whatever it is, not like romantic or sexual or whatever, but some sort of chemistry. And they definitely have whatever it is. That's for sure.
And there are just some people who can make that chemistry feel real. And I think I don't remember a Charlize Theron role where I didn't feel like she had chemistry with the cast. So she's just a wonderful like magnet of people, I think. So
Yeah.
And I'm not a big Tom Hardy guy, so I can't tell you too much more he was in besides the couple roles. So I don't know if he just goes on screen and has chemistry with folks. I mean, there are some people. Sam Rockwell's my favorite one, who just no matter what role he's in, he has chemistry with everyone in the role, and he's going to dance. And
yeah, that's true.
What more do you ask for?
That's true. I do have a soft spot for Tom Hardy, but I'm trying to think like the movies that I've seen him with, whether the chemistry that he has with other people on screen is like actual chemistry or it's just my crush on Tom Hardy coming out and like being projected onto whatever I'm watching. So I can't really answer that for you.
And I didn't want to mention the crush because I know you and your sister have both had a crush on Hardy for forever, it seems like. But yeah, that is a thing.
It really is. And I think this is definitely my number one crush Tom Hardy role, even though he looks like a dirty wastelander throughout it all. It's because he's Max, he's perfect in it.
Yeah. Plus, you're in a dirty wasteland. You should look like a dirty wastelander.
Yes, exactly. Again, I was rewatching this movie and everybody looks dirty all the time. Like you watch these movies where somebody is like stranded somewhere on an island or whatever, and like they look great throughout it all. Like they look clean and pristine, like all that stuff. You're like, this is not a real person who has been like stranded on this island for 12 years or whatever. And in this movie, you can see the grit on everyone all the time. Like, again, every part of this movie is so well executed and planned, and even down to that, which I could not be comfortable for everybody.
Which sometimes it makes sense. Like Castaway, you're on an island in the ocean, and that character looked like to establish a routine. So you could see that he was bathing himself in the ocean somewhere every day, but in a desert wasteland with no water, yes, you should be covered in grit and grime and be filthy.
Absolutely.
Whereas Waterworld's the reverse. For some reason, they're all in the water, and all those guys are covered in grit and grime because they're trying to look like they're in Mad Max. So
I have to confess, I've never actually seen Waterworld, so I'm gonna have to go with what you say.
I don't know that you're missing anything, but I think you're missing so much.
I mean, if my love for Mad Max movies is anything, I should definitely watch it. I mean, even if it's just Mad Max but with water,
That might be true, but it also might just set you up for disappointment. But anyone who has seen Mad Max can comment below us once this is posted and let us know what they think, if you should watch Waterworld or not.
There you go. Comment below, please. I will be reading.
I don't know. I feel like Waterworld came at about the time where the Kevin Costner love kind of just dropped too. So I don't know if that had anything to do with it, because I was not privy to this being a child, and
Hmm.
pre-internet in everyone's phones. So, I mean, pre everyone having a phone in their pockets, really. So
It's
I
true.
don't know.
Hmm.
Also, I had a lot of time on my hands as a kid, so this long ass movie about water was fine, and it
That's
would
true.
be all my siblings and I watching it. And I don't know, as an adult, I would go back and love it. So maybe it's not that good, but I loved it. I loved the idea of maybe I just love the idea of like that human instinct for survival, even though when it seems so fruitless, and that's on full display in Fury Road.
Hmm. Exactly. Yeah. It's like, well, again, I think it really speaks to children too, because it's all like obviously handmade stuff. And I'm sure in Waterworld, it's the same thing where it's like everybody has made whatever they're using, it's obviously, or like found it, like Furiosa's war rig, like there's a bunch of stuff in there that is obvious that she has either made it or found it or fixed it in some way. And I think that is a like real allure, especially to kids, because they can be like, I can do something like that, like in my imaginary like playtime in the backyard. Like I do that all the time.
Yeah, that's probably 100% true, I think. Which just made me think of the scene where the Zoe Kravitz characters like
Hmm.
matching guns with the bullets, and she just lists
Hmm.
them off, and there's humor and pride in that statement. And it's just like a well delivered line. And then when she's counting the bullets of the big gun, just so many little things. Like, yes, in that situation, being the one to match the bullets to the gun is a huge job because
Hmm.
you need to know what's there. And just another small detail from this cast that all agreed to get dirty and be filthy and
Yeah.
for the most part become unrecognizable from top to bottom. So
Mhm.
it's a good movie. I'm glad you chose this as a topic to give me a chance to watch it and really watch it. So
Really pay attention. Well, that's the
yeah,
thing too, is like again, because there's such little dialogue through most of the movie, like you really get at least hints of people's backstories. Like you're saying, the Zoe Kravitz character, like she knows how to reload the rifle when they're going through the canyon. And she knows how to match the bullets to the guns, which I couldn't do. I don't have that kind of knowledge, like even in a movie universe, like so she obviously has some sort of backstory there where she has this info. And it's never like talked about or anything. She just does it and it's perfect. Like it's a perfect script.
yeah, and I mean the one wife who started to run back and was
Mm-hmm.
dragged back, but then she's the one who jumps and like saves Furiosa, and like
Mm-hmm.
just that solid like commitment. Like there was some real Stockholm with these
Mm-hmm.
wives, and she was the last one to shed it. And just seeing that moment was great in the film. So, I mean, yeah, the chase was a straight line, but that character development was like different for everyone.
Yes.
And I mean, even seeing a war boy watch what was going on and just realize how wrong it was too.
Mm-hmm.
Just great film, Jules. And I'm glad I watched it. I think the lack of dialogue is a problem for the film in this day and age, simply
Mm-hmm.
because how quickly you could be doing something else on your phone.
That's
Um,
true.
I was probably texting or swiping or reading some article on my phone the first couple times I watched this and not paying attention. And
Mm-hmm.
last night I didn't have my phone. It was on the counter next to me and I'm watching the movie. And sometimes I think we just need to do that again to appreciate movies.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and again, like that's really all that I do these days is I'll put something on the TV and then, like you said, scroll my phone and everything like that. And there are very few pieces of media that can grab my attention away from that these days, which is terrible. I mean, but Mad Max Fury Road is definitely one of those movies that, like, if I'm distracted in any way or whatever, like immediately the phone goes down and I'm like locked in to watch this movie. And that doesn't really happen anymore.
No, it really doesn't. And I'm trying to do it more. It's kind of inspired by a good buddy, Jason in Pittsburgh. I used to joke because he hates pro wrestling, but he's like the biggest pro wrestling fan I know. Like we became friends because he was wearing an Ultimate Warrior shirt,
Nice.
and but then talking about he doesn't like anything the rest of us would like, and I was like, man, how do you hate everything fun about pro wrestling for being a pro wrestling fan? And now he's on a wrestling podcast, and I listen to him, and all the other guys are criticizing it, and he's just like, just watch, enjoy it, and I'm like, I'm like, what a great idea. So I'm trying to go into things. I've quit doing any rating systems. So like
Mm,
Goodreads, I don't rate books anymore. Untapped, I don't rate
wow.
my beers anymore. I like it or I don't. And I'm finding if I just go into a mindset of that, not to be critical of things, I'm liking
Mhm.
so much more
Yeah,
simply because I'm just trying to enjoy it.
exactly. Well, I think that goes into again, even like expectations for movies. Like I was really trying to temper my expectations for this movie when I first saw it because I would have been so disappointed if it was bad. And so I was really trying to go into it and be like, remakes are never usually that great, or like whatever this soft reboot is, like never really my thing. So like it's probably not going to be awesome. And I think that really helps going into movies like this, where it's just like, try not to have any expectations, even though it is the greatest movie ever. And you have a great time.
No expectations. Well, in the prequel thing, it's very related to the original films, but it's not at all related to the original films. And I think that's
Yeah.
the way to go. It's set in this universe, but it's not there's not a straight line to the story with the exception of the Max character. And
Mhm.
Tom Hardy's Max is completely different than the other Max. So
Yeah.
it's just a wild thing that they're connected, but they're connected. Like had they been separate movies and you were just like, this is a Mad Max themed
Yeah.
dystopian piece of fiction, that would make sense to me as well.
Exactly. Yeah, it can definitely be its like own standalone movie. You don't have to have seen any of the old Mad Maxes to get it, or like there really isn't even any like callbacks to the old Mad Maxes besides like the flashbacks that Max has sometimes. And even then, like without any backstory, you understand what's happening with that. Like you don't have to know really what's going on.
No, not
Um,
at all. I think honestly, just making it a Mad Max film was A, this is how the studio is going to give you the money to make this film.
yeah,
And
very true.
B, this is how you're going to get a bunch of bros to go see it when really the feminist streak through this movie is miles long.
Oh,
So
absolutely. Um, and that's what like I remember hearing about it online. Like a bunch of people were upset or whatever, didn't like the movie. And they were like the Mad Max bros, who were kind of, I guess, tricked into seeing the movie. I never watched any of the trailers for it, but apparently it's all Tom Hardy, essentially like Mad Max. This is Tom Hardy's movie, blah blah blah, and he's really not in it for very much. Um, and so I think a lot of people were like upset about that or whatever, like, oh, this isn't really like a Mad Max movie, blah blah blah. And I'm like, have you seen any of the other Mad Maxes? Like, it's really not about Max in any of those movies. Like, he's just along for the ride. He's either trying to help or trying to survive, and that's really it.
and that's exactly what he's doing here. And honestly, that's what everyone but Charlize is doing here. And it's
Mm-hmm.
interesting. I didn't watch any of the trailers either. Uh, your cousin-in-law Buck is a non-trailer person, so I've slowly shifted over the past decade and watched less
Mm-hmm.
trailers because of that. Because he's right, like
Mm-hmm.
trailers kind of set things up. But I mean, every poster for this film was Charlize Theron on top of the rig. Her name was
Mm-hmm.
above the title of the film. Like
That's true. Yeah.
if you were tricked into seeing this because of Tom Hardy, you weren't paying attention. That's your fault,
Yeah.
bro.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's on you for whatever reason. But this is kind of like my litmus test for people. Like if I talk to them about it and be like, oh my God, like Fury Road is so great. It's the best Mad Max movie. And if like they're kind of like, like Charlize Theron or like, oh, the women, the old women, the Bubulini, like that would never happen in real life or whatever. It's like, all right, well, you're on thin fucking ice, my dude. Like, you can not like the movie. That's fine. You can say that, things are unrealistic. But again, this is a post apocalyptic movie. It's not going to be realistic anyway. And do you know women? Because, like, they can really fucking bore down on shit when they really have to.
Yeah, to say it's not realistic from anyone. If you were going to see this movie in the first place and your problem was it wasn't realistic,
Right?
ask them how they feel about the Fast and the Furious franchise would be the counter to that if they don't want realistic.
Yeah, true.
Which I guess in that same token, I won't watch the Fast and the Furious movies. They seem
Mhm.
ridiculous to me. But then again, I loved my experience watching this. But I think the difference is that human drive to live
Mhm.
is in this film. So I can forgive unrealistic because it makes sense to make unrealistic happen when it's the choice between life or death for some people.
exactly. And I think it's really grounded in the emotional storyline that it has. Like you were saying, like everybody reacts in not a normal way, but like an expected way. Like you can see your own self in the way that they do things, even though they're in this, like fantastical world. Like it's definitely grounded in the characters, I think.
Yeah, and it was an excellent choice to keep cutting to inside the rig to see their faces. We didn't need dialogue. We didn't need dialogue overseeing the action. We just needed their faces, and that kind of tells you everything when you just cut to see the emotion on their faces. And I mean, that's got to be so difficult as an actor to sit in a rig in the back seat, like scared.
Yes. Well,
But
that's the thing. Even like in the beginning when Furiosa is deciding to essentially make a break for it, and we don't know what's going on yet, and she's like almost in tears, for whatever reason, and it's great now. Like after I've seen it so many times, you know why she is reacting this way, but she can tell you so much without having to again like look at you and say it. You just know that she's upset for some reason, and it's going to be a hard day.
and the dialogue is sparse in that scene, even though she's got the war doll or the war boy right there with
Mm-hmm.
her, but it's used perfectly. It
Mm-hmm.
sets up everything by him questioning what's going on. You're
Yep.
like, oh, well, now we know exactly what's going on. The exact
Mm-hmm.
opposite of what he thinks. So
Yeah, exactly. And I love it that for a pretty long time in that sequence, like her war boys are trusting her. Like he asks her what's going on, and she's like, we're having a detour, and he's like, okay, like let's go, we're turning
yeah.
around.
And I think that trust is the same reason you see so many characters chasing her, being the one to want to take out Furiosa, to kill
Mm-hmm.
Furiosa. And the switch from capturing her to killing her is so quick too. And that just says a lot of what she's redeeming for, because if her name is that well regarded and that despised, she did a lot of shit.
Yeah, she definitely did a lot of fucked up shit before this movie started. That's for sure. And again, I love it. They don't have to go into it. They don't have to like say anything, go into detail. Like your own mind can fill in what has happened before, and I think that's perfect.
And because of the setting, there's no judgment of what she's
Mm-hmm.
redeeming for and what shit she'd done before, because you get it. You look at the other people and you look at the position she's got, and you're like, everything you did was for survival.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and to kind of get to the top of this, to someday maybe get out of here.
All right. I think we covered about as much of the movie as we can, unless we want to talk about the grains of sand now.
Well, I mean, can we talk about the actual action for a hot second?
I mean, I'm
You
not a
have
big
time?
action person, but yeah, we can talk about the
Oh
action.
my God,
Let's talk about the action, Jules.
it's so good. I like everything about, like you were saying, you like that they had shots of people inside the war rig, which I think was a great choice because like we actually have to, feel for these people, and we already do, but that's besides the point. But just, and I mean, it is one long chase, so it's not very complicated, but the way that they filmed everything, like from the time that Max gets off of the war rig and Furiosa gets stabbed, he's trying to get back to her and is like climbing over cars. He gets into like I think it's the bullet farmer's car at one point that gets exploded. The his old car gets fucking run over, and Slit, who's driving it, is just fucking like obliterated. And it's this huge scene. It's probably what 20 minutes of him trying to get back to them as they're trying to get to the pass.
Yeah.
And you know exactly what's happening the whole time, which is insane to me. I don't know how they did it, let alone the actual stunts, like the polecats, which are actually real people on real cars, which is mind blowing to me. It's just so much fun.
It is a great scene for an action scene. As I just said, I'm not an action person, and part of me kind of just wanted to be back in the rig, but it was great. And some of the choices they made to pair off by having the big guy come over and Hardy to power himself through him, so that the smaller of the big guys is the one fighting Furiosa, is just a solid move, because you don't believe in her stabbed, injured state that Furiosa stands a chance against many people.
Mm-hmm.
And she does, she gets help there. So everything was so well choreographed in that,
Mm-hmm.
which you said simple, like it's a chase, but there were so many moving pieces in the chase. It
Oh my
doesn't seem simple at all. Like hats off to the stunt coordinators there, into the camera work. Like the camera work's insane because it feels like one continuous shot, which goes back to the editing.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's no way, of course, you do this in one continuous shot.
Oh, of course not. And I think that's why, I mean, obviously it should have won all those Oscars, but the one for editing for sure, because I think it was and I like will watch the special features on this movie just for fun because it is so fun to me, like the stunts that they all did, all the car like crashes and chases and stuff. But one of them is all about how, because it's such a fast movie, like it goes by so fast, obviously, and there's so many cuts that they really had to like focus everybody in the middle of the frame so that you don't have to go looking every time it changes scene. You just know, you can just essentially stare at the middle of the screen and you'll get all the information that you need to get. And that's so perfect for them. Like it works out so well. It's not confusing to your eye at all. And it's a pretty confusing chase scene.
And that's brilliant to keep everyone so you can just stare center frame and kind of see where they are, because so often in action films, like there's something going on off screen that all of a sudden becomes critical in a second. And you're like, I wish I could have even seen that in the background.
Yeah.
But even sometimes in the background, it's hard. You'll miss certain things. And I think that's what's beautiful about this film is there's things in the background, but they're not plot crucial at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. One of the things that goes back again to the like you were saying, the feminist streak in it too, where especially compared to like Marvel movies, you can tell the difference between when a woman is shot in frame and when a man is shot in frame. Like they're completely different, and it's all to get like the TNA on Scarlett Johansson or whatever. And it's like you don't have to have it framed that way. Like yes, it might be pleasing to the eye, but this is a superhero movie. Like I don't really need to see all of Scarlett Johansson all the time. And in this movie, everyone is shot the exact same way in frame. And it's perfect. Everybody's equal.
And the frame goes back to comic books in general. The way a woman is drawn in comic books versus a man is just insane. It's become better in the last few years, and hopefully the movies start to catch up. But I mean, comics took forever to fix it, and and they all haven't all corrected it. So who knows? But yeah, that's an excellent point. Although I think everyone but Ryan Reynolds wants their eyes on ScarJo at all times. So
well, me and Ryan Reynolds are in the same camp, I guess.
Not a bad camp to be in.
I'll take it.
It's interesting that you did bring up the ScarJo thing, because I think of her and Charlize Theron as like parallels quite often.
Really?
I just think they're both phenomenal, but the way they get cast, I think, is completely different, because they're both they can both do a gritty drama. But I don't know if it's a choice on her part or not, but Charlize gets to transform way more than Scarlett Johansson does. And I'm always just so curious about that, because as much as I love ScarJo, you can't put her in this film.
That's true. It would be Scarlett Johansson in a Mad Max movie. Like when you're watching this movie, you don't think, oh, that's Charlize Theron. Like that's just Furiosa.
Yeah, she becomes someone different, and I think that's true of the film Monster. Like she's not Charlize Theron in that film. And then there are just there are actors, both men and women, that just can't become other people. George Clooney is always fucking George Clooney.
Yeah. I was going to say Leo DiCaprio.
Yes. Which is why had he never gotten that Oscar, I would have been okay with it, because
yeah, me too. I mean, that's no shade on Leo or Scarlett Johansson, like awesome actors, but again, like they're always going to be that person kind of in their movies,
And I'll never understand how much of it is their choices versus their studio, because ScarJo's made some really interesting roles. I think the film Closer with Jude Law was an interesting one, where she's playing something different, but she doesn't get gritty.
That's true.
I mean, she gets sexy, I guess, is how she goes different from that. Like, which, I mean, good for her. She's had a fabulous career. She is phenomenal. And Charlize is phenomenal. And interesting for such talented women. I don't know. At the same time, I don't think you put Charlize in the Black Widow, and
Yeah.
she doesn't become. I think ScarJo is like the heart of those those Marvel films.
Yeah.
I mean, I cry every time she dies. So,
Wow.
and I just don't know that Charlize could do that. But then again, I don't ever want to doubt Charlize because she is so funny when she's called to be funny. So
That's true. Again, I mean, again, she's just a phenomenal actor, like in all of her movies, you know.
yeah, and I'd love to hear from her whether or not this is like something that was forced on her, if this was a choice for her, because it feels very organic. It feels like this is her choice. I want to do
Mhm.
weird roles. I want to
Mhm.
act. I don't want to just be beautiful Charlize Theron on screen.
Exactly.
And
You would hope so. I mean, if you have all this, I guess, power as a actor, you know, you choose your own roles or whatever, like I would absolutely go for those weird, hopefully fun,
yeah,
you
I
know.
think Matt Damon's probably the male equivalent, whereas he could be Matt Damon for the rest of his life and no one would judge him for
Right?
just being Matt Damon again. But he'll do a grittier film, and
Yeah.
then he'll go back to the Bournes or the Ocean's
Mhm.
movies, where he's just essentially playing some version of himself.
Mhm.
And I don't fault anyone for doing that, but I just
Yeah.
respect the hell out of those that get weird with it. And
Right?
Charlize gets
Why
weird
not?
with it. So
You're getting paid for it anyway. Might as well try something new, you know?
exactly. All right, Jules, anything else you wanted to say before we get out of here?
Oh gosh. I'm sure that there's a lot more that I want to have said at the end of this, but I think I've talked to you off enough about Mad Max Fury Road and
I
how
will
it is.
I will say it doesn't matter what the topic is, as soon as we quit recording, there's always something else you want to say.
I'm sure.
But that's the idea. We're not scripting this, it's just a free-flowing conversation. So
It's true. And it was a fun conversation to have.
I was so glad to catch up with you, and knowing all the cool shit you are into, I hope you'll come
Mhm.
back and talk to me about more cool shit.
I know I'm gonna have to actually like really get into stuff. I was talking before I let you go. I was talking to my friends about this actually because I was like, I really don't know what to talk to him about, like with the pandemic and everything. I really haven't been watching movies. I haven't been watching TV, and can't really do much outside of my home. You know, in the pandemic. So I was like, there's not a lot that I actually like love, which is sad. So now that we're actually, I hope, getting kind of out of these dark times, that there'll be more that I can talk to you about.
Yeah. Well, and we always have books. I mean,
True.
we can just go on and on about Elmore Leonard.
There you go. It's perfect.
All right. Thank you so much, Jules.
Yeah, no problem.